Good evening, everybody. I am Anne-Marie Lipinski. I am the curator of the Nieman Foundation for Journalism at Harvard, and welcome to the 2013 Christopher Georges Conference. It is so great to have you all here on this miserable Cambridge day, much nicer inside Lippman than out. This is just one of the most exciting weekends of the year for us, and it'll be especially so this weekend. We have 70 students from 17 college papers with us this weekend, which is just thrilling. The Georges Conference is an annual two-day event sponsored with the Nieman Foundation, featuring sessions on a variety of journalism topics. This year, the theme is Digital First, a theme you hear in a lot of professional newsrooms, and it will offer a way to explore the many ways that journalists can tell stories and do journalism across multiple platforms. The conference provides an opportunity for students to learn from veteran journalists, many of whom will be current Nieman Fellows at the Nieman Foundation, and a network with peers from colleges across the Northeast. This weekend every year is a tribute to journalist Christopher Georges, a magna cum laude graduate of Harvard who served as executive editor of the Harvard Crimson. After working at the New York Times, CNN, and the Washington Monthly Magazine, Chris went on to a very successful career as a reporter for the Wall Street Journal in Washington. He took particular interest in covering the human impact of public policies, something that distinguished the stories that he wrote. After battling lupus, Chris died in 1998. We are so indebted to the members of Chris's family who generously sponsored this conference in Chris's memory, and I can't think of a more spectacular way to honor a journalist, particularly one who worked at Harvard, than to gather his next generation peers together this weekend. We have with us tonight, as we do every weekend this year, Chris's parents, Mary and Jerry Georges. Welcome back to Lippman House. And his sister, Gigi Georges, and her husband, Jeff Oxman. So welcome to the two of you. And also it's especially great to have Gigi. She is on the advisory board of the Nieman Foundation. We're always very honored to have her with us. Despite radical changes in the news industry, this is an exciting and very important time to be a journalist. If you're not already considering a career in journalism, we hope that maybe this weekend encourages you to do so. Nieman is pleased to sponsor this conference each year with the Harvard Crimson as a partner. In particular, this year, we'd like to thank Crimson President Bobby Samuels for so willingly helping to find rooms for all of you, and for lining up student speakers for our introductions to the sessions. Thanks also go to all the Crimson staffers who are putting students up this weekend. We hope you'll be tweeting throughout the weekend, #Georges13, and that you are full of questions this weekend. This is a time to ask whatever is on your mind about journalism. We'll also be videotaping the sessions, so, comb your hair in the morning. And we'll be posting these on the conference website after the weekend, and we hope that it's material that you can come back to and also point your friends and colleagues back in your school newsrooms to if they were not able to attend. After dinner, we will hear from our keynote speaker, Bob Cohn, editor of Atlantic Digital, who's just in time. And he'll be introduced by Crimson President Bobby Samuels. I would like to, if we could, just very quickly, you'll be spending a lot of time together the next couple of days, and so I thought it would be great if we could just really quickly go around the room and have everybody just introduce themselves, tell us your name, where you go to school, paper, and maybe your year or major, whatever you think is interesting and identifying. We'll start with you, Lasser.
Okay, my name is Basor Feasley. I go to Brandeis University. I'm opinion editor of the Brandeis Hoot, and I am a sophomore.
Thank you.
I'm Emily. I also go to Brandeis. I'm editor-in-chief of the Brandeis Hoot, and I'm a junior. My name's Morgan. I'm the copy editor at Brandeis, and I'm a sophomore.
John Ostrowski. I'm a senior at Brandeis and editor of Brandeis Hoop.
Hi, my name is Nikita. I'm a beat reporter for the Crimson, and I'm a sophomore.
Hi, my name is Carrie. I'm a junior at Harvard, and I'm a news editor and a design editor.
Hi, my name is Tara. I'm a senior at Harvard, and I'm a former Crimson news editor.
Hi, I'm Julia, and I'm also a former Crimson news editor.
Austin Tedesco. I'm a sophomore at BC, and I'm a sports editor for The Heights.
My name is David Cody. I'm the editor-in-chief of The Heights, also from Boston College. I'm a junior.
My name is Eleanor Hildebrandt. I'm a sophomore at Boston College. I'm the news editor of The Heights.
I'm Mary Rose Bissinger, sophomore, Boston College. I'm the opinions editor of The Heights.
I'm Sam Weinstock. I'm a sophomore here at Harvard, and I'm a staff writer on Crimson.
Nick Fandos, a sophomore at Harvard as well, and a staff writer for the Crimson.
I'm Sophie Grace. I'm a junior at Yale and the opinion editor for the Yale Herald.
I am Emily Rappaport. I'm also a junior at Yale, and I am the former editor-in-chief of the Yale Herald.
I'm Nina. I'm a sophomore at Tufts, and I'm managing editor of Tufts Daily.
I'm Martha Shanahan. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Tufts Daily.
I'm Falcon Reese. I'm a junior at Tufts, and I'm a former managing editor of the Tufts Daily.
I'm short, so I'll stand.
I'm Brianna Jimerson, a senior at Tufts University, managing editor of the Tufts Daily, and also a columnist at the Daily.
My name is Margaret Waterman. I'm a sophomore at Boston University, and I'm an associate campus editor at the Daily Free Press.
Hey everyone, I'm Kyle Plants. I am a freshman at Boston University. I am the associate city editor for the Daily Free Press.
We have a couple students here.
I'm Bobby Samuels. I'm a junior at Harvard, and I'm the president of the Crimson.
I'm Julie. I'm a senior at Harvard, former managing editor of Crimson.
I'm Rebecca. I'm a junior at Harvard, and I'm the current managing editor of the Crimson.
Okay, I'm Mariana. I'm a junior at Wellesley, and I'm one of the editors-in-chief of the Wellesley News.
I'm Savanti. I'm a first year, and I'm sports and models editor for Wellesley News.
I'm Alex McFarlane. I'm a senior at Brown University, and I'm the news editor for the Brown Daily Herald.
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm a junior at Brown and the strategic director of the Brown Daily Herald.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I'm a sophomore at Brown and a features editor with the Herald.
I'm Leon Lin, freshman at MIT, and I write for News.
I'm Steven Swen. I'm a sophomore at MIT, and I'm the online media interactive graphics department head.
I'm Joanna, also from the Tech at MIT, a contributing editor.
Hi, I'm Yui. I'm a first-year student at Wellesley, and I'm a staff photographer for the Wellesley News.
I'm Sam Roth. I'm a junior at Columbia and the editor-in-chief of The Spectator.
My name's Jeremy. I'm a sophomore at Columbia, and I'm the campus news editor for Spectator.
I'm Finn. I am a junior at Columbia, and I am the managing editor of The Spectator.
Hi, I'm Diana Ming. I'm a junior at Dartmouth College, and I'm the executive editor of the Dartmouth.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm a junior at Dartmouth, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Dartmouth.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm a junior at Harvard, and I'm the editor of the Crimson's magazine.
Hi, I'm Matt McNerney. I'm a junior at Dartmouth, and I'm a managing editor of the Dartmouth.
I'm Luke Cohn. I'm a junior at Princeton. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Daily Princetonian.
And I'm Emily. I'm a junior at Princeton, and I'm the managing editor of the Daily Princetonian.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. News editor of UMass Amherst Daily Collegian, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Stephen Hewitt. I'm a junior at UMass Amherst, and I'm the sports editor of the Daily Collegian.
Hi, I'm Casey. I'm a sophomore at Columbia and the city news editor at The Spectator.
I'm Katie. I am a junior-ish at UMass Boston, and I'm the news editor of the Mass Media.
I'm Carrie. I'm a sophomore at Harvard, and I'm a blog editor for the Crimson.
I'm Marina. I'm a junior at Harvard, and I'm the editorial chair at the Crimson.
My name's Danny. I am the arts and lifestyle editor at UMass Boston's The Mass Media.
I'm Patrick. I'm a freshman at UMass, and I'm an assistant news editor at the Collegian.
We have a couple of our fellows here tonight. You'll see more of them this weekend. Maybe you could just quickly say hello.
Sure. Hi, I'm Betsy O'Donovan. I'm a fellow at the Nieman Foundation this year. I'm coming from North Carolina, where I was an opinion page editor, so I'm glad to see so many of you. And I'm half of the people who will be teaching the on editing and being edited session tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys there.
And I'm Alexandra Garcia. I'm a current Nieman Fellow, and in real life, I'm a video and multimedia projects producer for the Washington Post.
Not too long ago, it seems, because it does seem very, it's still so fresh in my mind, I would have said, I'm Anne Marie Lipinski, I'm the co-editor-in-chief of the Michigan Daily, the student newspaper at the University of Michigan, and having had a ton of great jobs since I had that job, I'm here to tell you that may have been the best job I ever had. And it's not to say that life goes down after one leaves one's student newspaper, but it is just such a special and spectacular time in your lives, and if you go on to be a journalist in your career. The opportunity to have and to hold and to take care and to publish this thing called a student newspaper is a tremendous privilege of college life. And I'm feeling so much enthusiasm in this room, and a little bit jealous of you all that you get to do what you do. So again, thank you all for being here. Look forward to working with you this weekend. And again, a very, very warm thank you to the Georges family for making this weekend possible. And bon appetit.
I'm Bobby Samuels, as I introduced myself. I'm the president of the Crimson. And on behalf of the Crimson, I am delighted to welcome you all to this year's Georges Conference. We're thrilled that you all were able to make it, from those of you who had just a short walk to those who made the hours-long drive. The Georges Conference, named in honor of former Crimson executive editor Christopher J. Georges, gives us a wonderful opportunity to reflect on our work as student journalists and to ask how we can continue to improve what we do. Additionally, it provides an invaluable and all too infrequent forum for interacting with our peers from other institutions. I especially want to thank Ellen Tuttle and the rest of the Nieman Foundation for their tireless work in organizing and planning today's and tomorrow's events. This conference would not have been possible without their efforts, so thank you. We really appreciate everything that you do. More broadly, we at the Crimson and at Harvard in general are incredibly fortunate to tough. Are incredibly fortunate to have a resource. We're incredibly fortunate to have a resource like the Nieman Foundation. We've already had the opportunity at the Crimson to hear a number of fellows speak this semester, and it truly is a group with a diverse set of talents and interests. It's my privilege tonight to introduce Bob Cohn, our keynote speaker. Bob is currently the editor of Atlantic Digital, and in that capacity, he oversees the editorial components of the Atlantic's digital properties, which include the Atlantic Wire, the Atlantic.com, and the Atlantic Cities. He began his career at Newsweek, where he became the White House correspondent and covered the Clinton White House from 1993 to 1996. And in the late 1980s, he spent a year at the Harvard Kennedy School. Between his time at Newsweek and the Atlantic, which he joined in 2009, Bob worked as an executive editor at Wired and the Industry Standard, and as an editor and publisher of Stanford Magazine. Under his guidance, Bob's publications have received numerous accolades. During his time at Wired, the magazine received 11 National Magazine Award nominations and won 6 times. Most recently, The Atlantic has been named a National Magazine Award finalist for General Excellence Digital in each of the past 3 years and has received a Webby Award for Best Magazine. Bob was also inducted into Min's Digital Hall of Fame in 2012. So please give a warm welcome to our keynote speaker tonight, Bob Cohn.
Do we want to go back one? Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much, Bobby. Thanks also to Ellen and Anne-Marie and James for having me here, and to the Georges family, whom I just met tonight at dinner, for sponsoring this great weekend. I think you guys will have a great time and hopefully learn a lot. In the spirit of the night, I was a long, long time ago the managing editor of the Stanford Daily, so I want to put that on the table, so I'm kinship with all of you guys. I want to talk tonight about the Atlantic, and especially about the ways that we have in recent years been reimagining the magazine for the digital world and the digital future. It is the case that we are 156 years old, so we are an old dog, and we're trying to learn some new things. And I'm going to talk tonight about the techniques that we've turned to bring the tradition and the heritage of the Atlantic into the new digital space. Another way to think of tonight's talk, maybe a more web-friendly headline for all of you, and it does speak to the second half of our conversation tonight, and we'll get there soon enough. But I do want to start first with some history. I arrived at the Atlantic 4 years ago, but the Atlantic has been around pretty much forever. This is the first cover from 1857. We were founded right here in Boston as a magazine of public affairs and arts and literature by some men like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Lowell and a collection of Boston writers, and specifically to oppose slavery. Over the years, some of the greatest writers in American letters have written for the Atlantic, and all with the idea of advancing the American idea. The mission statement in 1857 was, "The Atlantic will be the organ of no party or clique, but will honestly endeavor to be the exponent of the American idea." So we were, this I think is kind of an incredible roster of names to look at for a second. Fast forward 130 some odd years, we were actually pretty early to the web. In 1993, a company then called America Online, not yet then known as AOL, known as America Online, invited the Atlantic magazine to have a room on their new online service, which was not yet part of the internet. It was a kind of a walled garden, and they chose 3 magazines to have rooms on their new service: Time, People, and the Atlantic. And what this is a house ad in the Atlantic print issue. And you notice at the bottom, to discover the Atlantic Monthly on America Online, call 1-800 extension 10227 and receive 10 free hours to explore the service. This is the way most of you guys were born around this time. This is the way we all got onto the internet, and only 20 years ago. We broke out of the kind of AOL America Online walled garden and started theatlantic.com in 1995. Over the next 12 years, we kind of experimented wildly. Had staffed up as high as up to 10 people, back down to 2 people, back up again. A lot of this driven by the economics of the first web bust in 2000 and 2001. Mostly we were posting stories from the magazine and arts and literature. We weren't really yet doing politics and too much in the national conversation. These are 3 random covers that were pulled from me when I first got there 4 years ago. It just happens to be that one of them from 2005 is promoting a magazine story. I'm sorry, these are 3 random homepages promoting a magazine story about Harvard. You may notice the byline there is now a New York Times op-ed writer, Ross Douthat, who was at that point, a young writer at The Atlantic. In 2007, the company got serious about having a more purposeful presence on the web and to really engage in topics that were part of the conversation and were not simply the pieces that were in the magazine or pieces from the world of arts and literature. And as proof of this purposefulness, hired Andrew Sullivan from Time.com, where he had been, even prior to Time, one of the pioneering bloggers, then went to Time, then came over to The Atlantic, hired some other bloggers like Megan McArdle and Matt Iglesias, Ta-Nehisi Coates, mixed them with a few of our writers like Jeff Goldberg and Jim Fallows. And the goal here was to create a great stable of writers and have them comment on the news of the day and interact with each other. And this is back in the 2008 campaign, and to a great extent it did work. The Huffington Post referred to the Atlantic's collection of writers as the New York Yankees of bloggers. This was all taking place during the 2008 election, Obama versus Hillary, Obama and Biden versus McCain and Palin, and there was a lot going on, a lot to talk about, and we were in the digital conversation really for the first time. And during this period, I was not yet at the Atlantic. During this period, the Atlantic brass began wondering, how are we going to keep this momentum up when the campaign is over? What's the next chapter for the Atlantic online? Really, how do we get beyond the blog? This is about when I arrived in late 08, early 09. And we really wrestled in the first few months, the first 6 months I was there, with kind of three broad questions. How should we bring the web, a monthly magazine known primarily for long and deeply reported feature stories? How can we adopt the values of the web, speed, velocity, and urgency, without damaging the Atlantic brand? And how should we build and structure such a site? So I'm going to take a minute and try to bring you into our thinking back in 3-4 years ago on some of these questions before we move on. So how do we express the essence of the Atlantic to a digital audience? Well, one thing we don't do is just throw up the magazine print stories and say, here's our website, because the magazine comes out 10 times a year, has about 20 stories in each issue. If you want to be in the web conversation, this now is such an obvious statement, I'll try to say it more quickly. If you want to be in the web conversation, you can't put up 20 stories a month. In fact, today, looking back at that question, we now put up on our three sites, about 120 stories a day, about 3,000 stories a month. But back in 09, we're wondering, well, what should we be online if we're not just going to bring the magazine to the web? And the way we thought about it, and the way I started thinking about it was, let's reverse engineer what it is about the Atlantic that is distinctive. What is it about the Atlantic as a magazine, as a brand? Well, the Atlantic is provocative and authoritative and intelligent and witty and literary and compelling, engaging. So if we go ahead and build a website that is provocative and authoritative and compelling and witty and engaging and literary and all those things, and we cover the same topic terrain that matters to the Atlantic in print, we will have created the Atlantic online. And it'll be a different product. It won't be an extension of the print product. It'll be a second product that is a kind of an honest and pure expression of the Atlantic brand. So that was kind of the North Star there. Second, we knew that to succeed on the web, going to the question of values of the web there, to succeed on the web, we have to play by web rules. We have to be fast and smart and urgent and relevant and entertaining. I talked a lot in that first year about doing the second day story instantly. The second day story, when I came on as a journalist, was really the province of the news magazines and the New York Times on Sunday. It was the explanatory journalism. It was the narrative TikTok, the recreation, the going a little bit deeper on a story. In the interim, along comes cable TV, along comes the internet, along comes the blogosphere, along comes social media. And the second day story is what I wanted to do was try to give some handholds to the second day story in the same news cycle that the story was breaking. Now this sounds good, but to move at this kind of breakneck speed with a staff that's very young and not very big was kind of scary. And there's some concern about this great Atlantic brand that people have nurtured for 151 years at that point, 152 years. And I came from Wired and Condé Nast, where we had layers of fact checkers and researchers and top editors. Every piece was touched by a million hands, and we're going to move into this new kind of world. And the conclusion of this argument I had inside my head was just to surrender to the chaos of it all, or we will never get to the next level on the web. Third, how should we structure this kind of site? Well, we decided to build it, and this is not terribly original, but it was important at the time, build it around subject areas. When I got to the Atlantic, the homepage, actually not right away, this is probably late 09, looks something like this. The navigation is unhelpful in the extreme if you're a reader coming in. Channels, voices, correspondence, dispatches, I don't know what any of those things mean. So one of the first things we did when we started building out the channel structure was actually help readers navigate the site that way. So you've got, I can look at my screen here, politics, business, culture, international, science and tech, national, and food. Over time, we added some channels, we took other channels away, we changed entertainment to culture, we changed international to global, we lost the food channel, and we've recently added health, sexes, and China. This was kind of an interim step. This is what the site looks like today, with more, hopefully more navigational clarity. So readers coming to the homepage, even though most of us come into sites through side doors, readers who come to the homepage, and of course, the nav bars on every page of the site. So if you're coming in, no matter where you're coming in, a quick sense of what we're about, what the brand cares about. So to finish the narrative and take us through today, we've been able to invest. We've been able to hire writers and developers and designers. We created a sophisticated sales operation out of one that didn't really exist on the digital side. And we set high goals. And a quick look at our traffic growth from about 2.2 million unique visitors a month. This is Omniture numbers in February 08 to 13.8 million in January of 13. It's April 12th today. We're on track to do between 14 and 15 million this month, which would be great. And along the way, we launched 2 new sites under the Atlantic brand, the Atlantic Wire and the Atlantic Cities. The Wire launched in fall of 2009, but basically, and at the time, it was about opinion aggregation. We were going to be the place you came to understand what the op-ed writers, the cable TV talkers, the talk radio folks, anyone who made their living in kind of as a pundit. We were going to aggregate that and sift it and create lists and do original journalism around that topic. And about 18 months in, we changed almost everything about the site except the name of it. And what we became, and we've been doing the last 2 years, is really just a real-time news engine. It's a news site that some combination of our own journalism, of our own reporting, and some combination of curation and aggregation, all of it with original journalism, our own writing, generously crediting others that we're using as sourcing. So it's not like a Huffington Post where we say, here's what ran in the New York Times today. Anyway, it's proven to be a good product in terms of being interesting, and as you'll see in a second, we've had some success in terms of attracting readers and advertisers. A nav bar, politics, business, entertainment, technology, national and global. This site is in the middle of a redesign. We're probably about 12 weeks away from launching a fundamentally new look for the site, and a bit of a mission. Not a change. We really do like. We know we want this to be the news engine, but the internal tagline for marketing purposes is social news for smart people, and what we're after is it's a news site with a social spin. We're going to be using social media to source our stories to find out if we want to live up to the "What Matters Now" tagline. We want to be really what matters now, and the way to do that is to be aggressively in the social conversation, and then to turn that into quick stories. And this team of about 12 people generates about 50 posts a day. So if you take a job at the Atlantic Wire, you're mostly sitting with earbuds in and typing most of the day. The Atlantic Wire did have good growth. We're at about 5.1 million in January. And Cities, a whole different kind of mission here. Really a niche vertical. Cities is for people building the cities of the future and those who want to live there. So this is a site about global urbanism. It's not a city. It's not like a patch.com. It's not about individual cities, but it's really just what's happening in American cities right now. And it's a much younger site. Started 18 months ago. And is showing some growth, and we have actually quite ambitious goals for this year, and we've added some staff accordingly. Okay, so I'm going to shift gears. So that was the first part. I want to take the next few minutes and talk about some of the things that I think have helped us to grow. Some of the factors that have been important in the time that I've been there. First is adopting a digital-first culture. The company decided back in 2007, 2008 that we would be digital first, basically marrying the values of the web with the traditions and sensibility of the Atlantic. And not just paying lip service to it, but living up to that with investment dollars, with newsroom reorganizations. This is the first place I've been where the web is not treated as a kind of a second-class citizen. We have a much bigger staff than the print staff now, in part because as a monthly, the print group can rely on a lot of outside writers. If you're trying to post 50 stories a day, you need to have people working there right for you. In any event, the key to this, above all, was creating and insisting on an entrepreneurial culture, and we could talk more about that. In 2013, to say we're going to be digital first, this seems just painfully obvious. In 2007, before Mashable, before Business Insider, before BuzzFeed, if you're the Atlantic, this was not an obvious move, and I think it was important. I want to talk about hiring, and I'll spend another extra minute or two on this topic, given the audience. We've moved from about 9 people on the digital team to about 60 across the 3 sites in the last 4 years. Those 60 include 15 fellows. Fellow is just a fancy term for an intern, but they're full year and paid jobs. So we do rely a lot on young talent. But so as a result of scaling up like this across the sites and generating a lot of fellow classes, I've done a lot of hiring, and I've come to see, I think, what works in the digital space, at least what works for us. And I want to spend a minute, basically in the old days, which is to say when I started at Newsweek, or had I started a newspaper, magazine and newspaper editors knew exactly what they were looking for when they're hiring someone. You need reporters who can report, you need photo editors who can photo edit, you need researchers who can research, you need designers who can design. In the new world, with most of the jobs on the digital side, as I say, everyone's an editor-in-chief. The kind of people that we end up hiring and where we've had success, I think, is people who can do a bit of everything. They can report and write stories, write headlines and decks, select and crop photos, fact-check and copy edit the work of other people, make charts and graphs, oversee social media, manage outside writers. If you can do a little bit of coding, that helps because it's certainly useful. And this is not, these are junior jobs where everyone is doing a little bit of everything. It's a hugely different model. The kind of a move from a very vertical job structure to a very horizontal job structure. And I'm not saying this is good or bad. I don't know if this is trouble for journalism or a triumph for journalism, but I am confident that this is the way it is right now and probably the way it will be for some time. At the same time that we've been hiring young people with these skills, we've also hired a lot of mid-level people and more senior people and looking in unusual places. I hired a health editor last summer who had just finished his internship in radiology at UCLA, and he was 6 seconds from being a doctor and decided he didn't really want to do it after all, and he's now the health editor for theatlantic.com. We hired a writer for the city's site who was the weather blogger at a local TV station in DC and just had a great voice and maybe not where we would have looked. Our In Focus editor, we'll take a look at In Focus in a second, was a web developer at the Boston Globe. And yet also traditional hires. I've hired from the New Republic, the Washington Post, Patch.com, Gawker, Village Voice, Daily Beast, Politico, Nieman Lab, Wired. So a lot of more traditional places too. And a lot of homegrown talent that we've hired up from the fellow classes. Okay, social media. There was a time not too long ago when search was the dominant paradigm of the editorial web. We were all going to, search was the way that traffic came in. There was a cynical notion that we would assign stories based on search returns, based on what people were searching for. If the search of the day was what time was the Super Bowl, some editor was going to say, let's write a story called The Super Bowl is at 6 p.m. Because by definition, it's going to pop up one in search. Not by definition, but if you've got the right juice going, and you're going to get that click-through. This was the kind of the ecosystem of 2008, 2009, into 2010. It was profoundly cynical. It was bad for journalism. It was bad for journalists. It was uninteresting. I didn't want to do that. We didn't want to do that. We don't want to write for machines. We want to write for people. We were rescued by the social web and by the rise of not a search economy but of a sharing economy. During 2011, I should have brought this chart in to see if I can remember it. During 2011, the four main sources of our traffic. At the start of the year, the lowest was search, was social, then search, then type bookmark. People would type in your site in or have bookmarked it, and then other sources, Yahoo, Drudge, yourmomsblog.com, wherever they're coming from. By the end of the year, the social line had crossed all three and was the leading source of referrers to theatlantic.com. So that was a breakthrough moment for us because A, we were comfortable in our skin writing for humans and not for robots. And B, it was proof that we were creating the kind of content that people wanted to share. And that's what you want to be doing. Smart, topical, entertaining, interesting, social. And then we grew somewhat adept, no better than other people, but we taught ourselves to be good at pulling the levers of Facebook and Twitter and Reddit and Dig and StumbleUpon, and along comes Pinterest and Tumblr and everything, and just living in that world and figuring it out as best we can. We have at least 3 or 4 writers on our team who have more than 100,000 followers on Twitter, and the Atlantic.com. The Atlantic has, I think, 250,000, which is not actually that many relative to other media brands, but individual writers who are living in the social space has helped us a lot. And the good news is the work is done by the reader. It's readers who are sharing our stuff. When you get Facebook referrals, it's not because people go to the Atlantic's page on Facebook. It's because you guys click like when you read something, and that sends it out to your network. And that's how the Facebook numbers come in. So that social was important. Kind of the rise of social was important to us. So in print, the focus was always, let's make the next issue. And I spent 22 years in print before I got involved in digital. Although I was at Wired, so I pretended to know more about digital than I really did. But let's make the next issue of the magazine a little bit better than the last issue. Incremental improvement, that's what accounts for success. And I was happy to live in that world. In digital, the focus is on blowing up the latest model. Blowing up the editorial model, blowing up the business model, starting over all the time, trying to figure out what works, inventing something new. It can be frustrating. It can be refreshing. It's always disorienting. And you learn never to get too comfortable and to always be innovating and trying new things. So a quick tour of some really quick examples of more on the innovation side. This is our In Focus blog is Alan Taylor, who curates between 20 and 40 photos a day on a certain theme. And is by far the leading driver of audience to our site. This was 2 years after the earthquake in Japan. The lead photo doesn't explain what happens. And the next 39 or so photos, he usually says how many photos follow. I can look here. 18 photo pairs. So there were 36 photos. You see a photo the day after the earthquake, you click on it, you see that exact shot today from the same angle. So that's what was kind of an experience in watching this amazing recovery from the earthquake. But that kind of innovation in coding, Alan does his own coding. One Book 140 was our Twitter-based book club. We use social media to have people vote on what to read and then share their thoughts over Twitter. And then we would aggregate thoughts into posts on our site. And we were kind of driving the conversation through Twitter and Facebook, hence One Book 140. One of the triumphs was the crowd picked Margaret Atwood's The Blind Assassin to read one month. And then Margaret Atwood, 73 years old, joined in Twitter on the conversation and then did a web chat with us where she took questions from our readers about her book. Startup Nation. Each installment, this is like a special report. And I remember, I'm still kind of in the innovation category. It's not really relevant that this is about innovation too. The story is about innovation. What's innovative here is once we decided where to go, this is a road trip that our technology editor took, and he does it every year. He chose the Great Lakes region, and then went out to his followers on Twitter. He's the guy with 140,000 followers, and said, "Where should I go in these cities? What are the companies to visit? What are the coffee shops to go to where the deals are done? What are the bars to go to where the startup geeks hang out?" And he went and traveled around and took video everywhere, posted video, wrote posts, was active on social, and created kind of a full multi-platform experience This year we'll probably do an event around it as well. We do a lot of events. These are GIFs, which you can't tell because, of course, I don't have animation here. But we did a lot in the category of GIF journalism. In fact, we've stopped doing it because everyone else started doing it. But some of our Olympics coverage and campaign coverage were basically embedding GIFs in and writing about them. And then lastly, in the category of innovation, Brave Thinkers is an annual issue of the magazine that we bring to life on the site. In this case, you could take the 30 or so people we designated as Brave Thinkers and read the blurbs about them on a different page, and then vote for each one of them, and then come here and see how your votes stack up. And you can toggle between your rankings and all rankings. Okay, number 5 is getting beyond the text. So just like in print, visuals matter. The impenetrable wall of gray text can be as off-putting in digital as it is in a magazine or in a newspaper. And our data shows that stories with visuals are more likely to be shared. So we think of this as kind of the visual multiplier and try to think visually with everything we do. Sometimes the posts themselves are basically a series of charts. Not very often, but sometimes. Here's from the Atlantic Wire, which was like an interactive graphic that laid out kind of the actors in the Steubenville rape case. This was a tremendous, so the Biden-Ryan thing was kind of clever, cute. This was actually tremendous. One of the writers for The Wire is a former college gymnast, and she wrote about how the U.S. beat the Russians in the Olympics by going through each gymnast routine and showing their key. These are GIFs, their key moment. It was really not just using the trick as a trick, but actually using it for journalism. Maps on Atlantic cities and other places. When in doubt, just a simple pull quote can help. This was the homepage of the Brave Thinkers, the landing page of the Brave Thinkers feature from last year. And here's a look at In Focus. In this case, it's kind of a light topic. It's the festival of Holi, which is an Indian festival. But Alan does, Afghanistan wrap-ups and a whole range of things. But this is it, 25 to 40 photos, and it's a fantastic bit of kind of visual storytelling. So working with our business side, we've only been able to invest in edit the way we have because of the success that they've had in selling the site, selling all 3 sites. So we try to help whenever possible, help them bring in revenue. There's a very bright line between edit and sales, but there's some places in the Venn diagram where there's nice overlap between what is editorially compelling to me and the other editors and what is commercially appealing to our sales team. And when you can overlap those, you can do stuff above and beyond your regular coverage. We do plenty of stuff on the site that isn't commercially appealing. Most of our international coverage, we do that because that's our job as journalists, and that's our pact with the reader. But we do a whole bunch of things in the special report category that try to meet this overlap and give them a chance to go out and sell something. And if they don't sell, we'll do it anyway because we've gotten jazzed about the idea. This is just the landing page for our special reports, which shows what we've done in the last, I think, 2 years. And here's a look at a couple of them. Health of a Nation, medical providers, local communities, and the public wellness movement. Project Green, the Money Report, exploring the cost of everything. The Ideas Report, our annual guide to modest proposals that could change the world. So we'll pull these off maybe once a month, and it's a chance to have our editors flex different muscles, get out of the channel structure a bit, and have our sales team take something out that's special. Even though I say, just sell the site, we need something special. Can we sell something special? So we try to do that kind of stuff. So we post everything from the print magazine, of course, and it's refreshing and maybe counterintuitive to learn that the magazine stories do very well. They outperform the web stories on kind of an average. People will read 5,000 to 10,000 word stories on their screens, even on their phones. We don't have very many web magazine stories to do that with, 2 or 3 stories a month like that, but they do great. But we also will we'll supplement magazine stories online with video, with primary sources, with interactive graphics, with sidebars. And beyond that, we really started cross-pollinating in the newsroom. We do have mostly 2 separate staffs, but there's a lot of blur in the last year or two. We launched the China channel basically on the strength of Jim Fallows, who is a longtime print writer, who also happens to write on the site, but really is mostly a print writer and a China expert, in addition to an expert on a bunch of other things. And we felt with Jim on the team, even though he's not really writing for the site very much, as kind of a mentor, we could go off and get a China channel off. We've recently redesigned the magazine to go in the other direction. Atlantic Print magazine got redesigned, I think, 2 issues ago. I think the first 2 issues are out right now. And there's a whole new front of the book, which is basically written by the digital staff. We now have enough writers that we could actually treat the front of the book in a way that's a lot more energetic, has a lot more pieces, moving parts to it. And we have the horses on the digital team to help pull that off. And then just a little case study in print and digital working together. Some of you may recognize this cover from last summer. So here's a magazine cover that started a national conversation. We helped to spur the conversation. The day after the cover hit, we launched, not knowing it would spur the conversation. It did spur a special report on the site in which we invited about 8 or 9 panelists, including the writer of the piece, to participate and talk to each other and react to the story. That led, we were so happy with that result, that led to the launch of a new channel about 4 months later called The Sexes, which really is where we explore gender dynamics, women and men in the workplace, family issues. Here are 3 sample stories from this week on the Sexes channel. And we promote it in print and on our sites to get people to come to it. So this is really a case where a great magazine cover story birthed a new vertical on the site, which is doing very well and is in our sweet spot, both in terms of content, the kind of stories we want to do, and offers a whole new opportunity for advertisers that might not have come to the Atlantic. So a little bit on the content strategy here, so, a little peek into it. One way that we think about our content is through kind of a high-low prism. So we want to make the serious, complex stories as accessible as possible. We want to make the light and more frivolous stories as smart as possible. So here's your overly intellectualized matrix for that. I confess I did not prepare this for this meeting, but I'm happy to have rolled it out. So the upper white quadrant is kind of your quintessential Atlantic stuff. Seriously powerful. That's each of these in ITAL it's a sample headline that I pulled just somewhat randomly to make sure it fits. So that's high treatment of a high topic. High treatment of a low topic is refreshingly smart. They covered the Disney movie in a way that actually is interesting to me as someone who doesn't care about Disney princesses. That would be high treatment of a low topic. Over in the lower right quadrant, surprisingly entertaining, is lower treatment of a high topic. The sequester is important. You've read a lot about the sequester. What to expect when you're sequestering was kind of, let's take an entertaining look at a serious topic. And then over in low, we don't go there very often, but we do every now and then. This isn't even the greatest example of it. We transgress worse than this, but this is kind of the economics of spring break. This actually probably fits in one of the other ones, but I regret to say we haven't been in the low quadrant very much lately, so I couldn't find anything quickly. Embracing data, we really have kind of a geeky newsroom. Our journalists are very comfortable with data. They pay attention to the numbers. They keep Chartbeat and Omniture on their screens at all times. You walk by someone's desk, they're going to have that tab open somewhere. That's Chartbeat. That is a real-time look at what's happening on our site right now, who's reading what, and then as you drill into it, where they're coming from, where their sources are. Omniture is a more daily or weekly or monthly look at your traffic. The we're into the data not because we're slaves to it and not because we're trying to meet some quota. Writers don't have any number to hit. I don't have any number to hit. We're into the data because it's a automatic feedback loop. It tells you what people like, what's working, what isn't working in real time, or in this case, you might be surprised to learn at the end of the month that writer X is off the charts on certain kinds of stories, and maybe we'll do more of those stories. So we're in the data a lot, and it's never a substitute for human judgment, but it is interesting and helpful. Being the reader is, I like to constantly remind everybody to think about the sites in terms of the reader, not in terms of the writers, not in terms of our bosses, not in terms of you as an editor, but design the page for the reader, write the story for the reader, edit the story for the reader, make kind of architectural navigation decisions for the reader. It seems really obvious, but when sites stop making intuitive sense to people, it's because the editors weren't thinking like readers. And we listened to the readers. We did a redesign of the homepage about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now. And one of the specific goals was to make it less dense. Not the homepage, the article pages. Sorry, we did the homepage about 4 months ago. The article pages on theatlantic.com. The pages were very dense. So let's bop up the point size. Let's create a little more leading in there, space between the lines, make it a little more readable, bigger images. Oh, well, we came back within 12 hours, 24, 36 hours, that it really, and we agreed, it looked just like Play School. It looked like a Dick and Jane, primer. That probably is a dated reference. It looked like a Dick and Jane primer over here. And so we fixed it. It's still way less dense and more airy, but it's not quite as loose, and it didn't really suggest the kind of gravitas that we would like to suggest. And finally, on this point, we want to be where our readers are. In print, when they want to be in print. On the browser, when they're at a desktop or a laptop and they want to be on the browser. If they're on their mobile devices, on a mobile optimized browser. If they want an app on the iPad, we have iOS apps and Android apps. And now we're all over Kindle and Nook, and especially Flipboard. Flipboard is huge for theatlantic.com. So we're utterly platform agnostic. We're creating a bunch of content. We want people to read it any way they want to consume it. Now, there's some back-end work. When we discover they want it on their smartphone, we need to actually do some development work to make that happen. So your Android phone, so the content looks right. It's not that easy, but it's very important to be platform agnostic because we don't know where our traffic and our audience is coming from next. And lastly, but most importantly, obviously, is, of course, we care about new platforms and embracing the data and pulling the social levers and understanding search engine optimization. But it is all about the journalism, and we're just seeking excellence at all times with the journalism, with the goal of bringing the Atlantic's tradition of great journalism into the digital age. I'm happy to take any questions.
What is your relationship like with the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic Monthly? Like, how much influence does he have over what goes on the website?
Yeah, we run, I would say almost completely independent operations, except for the things I said. The content from the magazine runs on the site, probably accounts for between 5 and 10% of our traffic every month, which would be outperformed if you look purely at the number of stories we post. We're posting way fewer than 5 or 10% of our overall stories, our print stories, but they're important. The cover story is a statement when it goes up on the site. It'll lead the homepage for half a day. We now have web writers writing for print, and even more than we did before. But we're running independent operations, and I would say our relationship is very good, but pretty independent. Yes.
How much sponsored content do you run a month, and where do you see that going in terms of how much you're
So the
more-
sponsored content, which we actually call sponsor content, because sponsored content is everything that's on the site when an advertiser is, at least the way I think of it, when Intel runs ads on our technology pages, they're in effect sponsoring our technology channel. Sponsor content, some of you guys may have heard of, and we've been in the middle of this a little bit along with others, is when advertisers are actually writing content for the site to look like, to read as if it is editorial content. And the hallmark of when it works, when it's acceptable because readers aren't confused. That you know whether you're reading edit or whether you're reading an ad. And we have been vigilant, and lately even much more vigilant in clearly identifying a story that it's not written by the Atlantic editorial team with sponsor content. I don't have a page showing it, but we rolled out a new design about 2 months ago. And when the way you get to that content is through a headline tease on a landing page or a home page, and that headline tease says clearly sponsor content on it. It's written in a different font. It's a sans serif instead of a serif. It looks a little bit different, and it says sponsor in some way. So everything I understand about the business side, which is not very much, tells me that this is an important direction for as a revenue source. So we decided that we were going to do this, and our mistake was we weren't clear enough in the first iteration of making totally clear to the reader whether you're reading something that is editorial or advertising. And I think we've succeeded at that now. It could be a flash in the pan, it could go away, but right now advertisers seem to want it. It's not that different from the newspaper editorial, advertorial that I grew up reading. Yes.
I was wondering what the cities and the wire site growth, like what ideas about that?
Two very different ideas. The common idea is just a general ambition to grow and do new things and innovate and try to get big, which is not my idea, but I embrace it, but it is the corporate philosophy. And cities happen because Richard Florida, an academic and occasional writer for the magazine, began writing for the site, theatlantic.com, and he's the author of The Rise of the Creative Class, which was kind of a manifesto about 10 years ago, and he writes about the interaction of culture and urbanism. He's in the kind of urbanism world. Said, hey, we should do something like this, and I instantly thought it was a good idea editorially, and we spent a few months doing kind of a business analysis and discovered that there was probably an opportunity on the business side here as well. So we started small with 4 people on that when we launched it 18 months ago. The Wire kind of grew out of an internal incubator inside the company. And of course, it started as that opinion aggregator. So, but there was this notion that what the world needs. When I got there, there was this I think we called it the innovation unit or something. There was this incubator that we eventually dissolved and do most of that in-house under the Atlantic brand now. But it was kind of off and running on the theory that this would be, actually the theory was many people were aggregating, Huffington Post, Drudge, Yahoo. There was this active world of aggregation out there that we weren't really part of. What could we do that would be Atlantic-style aggregation? What would be different than what others are doing? And we thought the world of ideas and opinion, A, had an Atlantic sensibility, and B, wasn't actually, this wasn't happening to it on the web yet. So that was that idea. Yes?
What's been the conversation between you and your team about the New Republic's new website? Do you view it as a success? Do you think there's anything you could learn from that?
I like it quite a bit. It's part of we were in the middle of redesigning those Atlantic.com article pages when TNR launched their new site, maybe 10 weeks ago. And the white space and the airiness actually we were already going in that direction, but we liked it. The persistent nav, where when you get beyond the first screen, the nav shrinks and stays there, and it gives you the article title you're on. As you go deeper into a story, we're actually trying a version of that on a redesign of the Atlantic Wire that we're in the middle of right now, where the nav shrinks but stays persistent as you go down. You can keep social buttons up there all the time, so you don't have to go finding them, for example. It's probably impractical for us because it doesn't seem to be, at this point, aimed at making any money. There are no ad spaces on the New Republic, and I don't think I would get very far proposing redesigns of our site with no space for ads. But I think they're trying to, and maybe I'm misspeaking, and there are ad spaces there now, but there weren't at first. If they probably want to build an audience first. I think Google wasn't worried about money at first either. They were worried about attracting people. So I think it's pretty interesting. Yes?
We were talking about the idea of everybody as editor-in-chief. What percentage of your writers right now would you say are really experienced in coding or interactive graphics, or sort of what we once considered very specialized knowledge for online, which is becoming so much more prominent?
Yeah, few are at that level. Interactive graphics especially, that's a whole suite of skills that we don't have enough of. And certainly would not expect my writers to know how to do that. It's a whole separate set of applications. Coding, you kind of never know on the staff. Everyone is constantly doing workarounds. We have a small web development team and an impatient set of editors who are constantly figuring out things on their own, which drives the developers crazy. But they're too busy doing other stuff. I would say maybe a quarter of our writers or editors are kind of can fake their way through some developing, something beyond just basic HTML. Absolutely not including me. Yes.
How many people see a story before it goes live?
Not very many. At least one person other than the writer, and also at most one person other than the writer. We don't really, unless something's very controversial, or unless I've heard it talked about in the morning meeting and I've said, I want to lawyer that, or I want to see that myself, or whatever it might be. Most pieces are going through one editor. Yeah. And then we fix things when they're wrong, or we try not to make factual mistakes, but we often will make a typo. And shortly after I got there, somebody came in my office and put a yellow stick in my computer which said a typo is not a mortal sin, because I came from Condé Nast, where you would never have a typo in anything ever, because you had a huge staff and a big research department and fact checkers, and you had one magazine a month, and every story was read 1 million times, and that just doesn't happen now. Yes?
One of your earlier points was creating a digital-first culture. What exactly do you mean by culture, and how do you in your position sort of get writers and photographers to think about angling their content in that
It's less of a content strategy. It is a kind of a corporate strategy that we are going to put the Atlantic on a digital footing, and we're going to be digital first in that. That's the way we're going to be thinking in terms of the next new products we create will be digital products. New people we hire will be on the digital team. We're going to be finding ways to bring the print product into the digital world through tablet and stuff in the browser. So it's really just getting the corporate culture onto a digital footing than it is about any content thing in particular. Yes?
When you're working through your redesigns, do you feel like you need to prepare your readers for the types of changes that are going to be seen on the site, or the kind of thing where you just change it and have the reader adjust?
Yeah, it's the same in print as in digital. You just, one day you wake up and people move the furniture in the living room and like, oh, I hate the couch over there. And then a couple of days later, like, the couch used to be there, really? I don't remember that. There's no, we just do it. And I did a lot of print redesigns, and now I've done more web redesigns than print because we do them so often and we have more sites. There's a cycle here. People usually complain and then they like it, and we might fix a few things. But we don't prepare them. Yes?
Go ahead.
Is there ever anything that you think would be good for web audiences in terms of ratings, but would dilute the brand, so you haven't done it? Or where do you draw that line?
Yeah, all the time. I can't think of the things we haven't done, but sure, I mean, the idea and actually the words, is that an Atlantic story? Is that going to be right for the Atlantic? Is in everyone's mind all the time. We want to push the boundaries. We want to. The brand is elastic. We want to take it in places where our forefathers would never have gone. But at some point, we have to be the Atlantic, and so there's an internal governor on everybody. Is that right for us? And you never really know. So you go a step a little too far in one piece, you step back on another. But I think that's an internal conversation that people have with themselves and with their colleagues and with me all the time. Yes.
What do you think is the impact of having writers and bloggers who are kind of their own character, like Andrew Sullivan? What does that bring to a product like The Atlantic?
Yeah, when I was at Wired, we did a cover story on kind of the rise of the personal brand, people and their brands, and we put Julia Allison on the cover, who's someone you guys probably don't know because she had a moment where she had a big personal brand through her digital life, and it seemed kind of. I mean, I'm very old school. I came up in a really different journalism culture, and it's just, now you hear 25-year-olds talking about their brand all the time, and well, that's not really, then they want to build their own brand. I need a big Twitter following to help me build my brand. I'm going to do a lot of cable. I'm going to do a lot of cable TV because it's good for my brand. And it's just, I don't know how I feel about it, except that it feels kind of inevitable. And it doesn't make them bad journalists. People are doing good work. And self-promotion used to be a dirty word, a dirty compound word. No, I just think it's par for the course.
How often do you think it's necessary to redesign or at least reevaluate the overall look and feel of your website?
Well, reevaluate is different from redesign. We try to go in and do what I would consider a major refresh every 18 months to 2 years, which means you got to start thinking about it after a year because that's how long these things can take. So about that. And a lot of it depends on resources, how much design and developer resources we have, how many sites we're operating. But I think I wouldn't do it more often than 18 months unless there's a strategic shift or a mission change that requires it. A lot of the redesign is not visual. Redesigns are really strategy moments, I think. It's a moment to sit back and say, what are the strategic goals of this product? And are we meeting them with the design? When we sat down and did the Atlantic homepage last year, we really were trying to drive depth. We get a lot of people to the site and they're not staying and going to more stories. So let's design the pages to get them to, we're publishing great content, we thought. Can we get them to read some more pieces when they're coming inside doors? So that becomes a strategic goal that has a design solution. Yes?
So in terms of depth, I'm curious about how social media is affecting the types of readers you have, whether it's people who click on some Facebook links occasionally or people who hear about a news event and want to have the Atlantic's take, or people who are refreshing your site a couple times daily. How are you catering to the different groups?
Well, the rise of social is the rise of a drive-by reader. You're going to lose if you succeed in social. Your depth will. So depth is the number of clicks a reader makes once they come to the site. So if you have 1.9 and your depth, it means that the average reader is consuming 1.9 pages per visit. That's about what we are. So if you want to get the number to 2.5 or 3. If they come in the front door, you're probably more likely to get them because they arrived to read something at the Atlantic. They typed it in, they bookmarked it. If they're coming in through search or through social, they may not even know where they ended up. They type in something, they follow a link on social, they read a headline, they read the first paragraph, they're gone. If you ask them a minute later, where were you? I don't know. I was on the internet. So that's not great for depth, but it's still a reader. And some of them might be converted into regular readers over time. But we don't really cater to them. We have started talking about if you come in from Facebook or if you come in from Drudge, we're going to put in related content modules of things that also that readers who came in from Drudge liked, or I forget how. I'm not sure what the metric will be, but we're starting to get granular enough to say where you came from will determine how the page looks to you. Not the article page, not the main article, but whatever we surround the article with. Related content, skybox stuff. And it's just, we have the data and we have the ability. We just need to actually figure out how to make it look and to put in the developer time to make it happen.
Maybe I could just close with one more question. You have a number of people here who are about to be on the job market. I'm wondering if you could just sort of talk to them a little bit about what you are looking for when you've hired everybody from, an almost radiologist to people coming from a more traditional background.
Right.
But, if one of them knocks on your door this summer and says, I've just graduated and now I'm looking for work, what are you looking for from someone who's coming at that entry level? And also, if you could just sort of frame it in terms of, it's interesting to me how sometimes conservative college newspapers can be. I think there's a lot of, they want to apprentice to the adult world as opposed to, this is our time and our paper and we're going to do something really utterly, completely different with it.
Right.
So just the sort of spirit of experimentation that you may be looking for.
Yeah, well, you put it exactly right. I think that the assumption is everyone comes in with the same toolkit or can learn quickly. You guys, everyone instantly knows how to do stuff that I'll never know how to do, and mercifully don't have to know how to do it at the kind of hands-on technical level of doing all the all the work that I talked about in that horrifying circle chart. But you might be surprised, though I think from your question you wouldn't be. What I've come to believe, the number one trait that works for us, and is something I didn't have when I got hired at Newsweek when I was 22, is creativity. Is the people who are creative, who have creative minds, are thinking in untraditional ways, and can approach the news environment and the kind of the news ecosystem with looking. And this is unique to the Atlantic because we're not doing that much reporting. We're looking for frames on stories. We're looking for smart frames on stories that are happening. We're doing original reporting too, but not as much. So who can, if you're on, the tech channel, and Facebook just bought Flickr, I want to have a really smart idea about that in 10 minutes, and then a piece 2 or 3 hours later. And that's a kind of creative, nimble mind. We're not going to succeed if we write a story about Facebook acquired Flickr for $2.5 billion in a move that stunned Silicon Valley, that kind of stuff. So I would say one, creativity, and all the words that go along with that, resourcefulness and innovation. And the other really is, and I suspect you guys wouldn't be here if you didn't have this, it's just a competitive desire to win, to work hard, to figure things out. The industry is a lot harder than it was when I started 25 years ago. And there's a kind of just an intensity that's required to succeed. And so try to filter for that too. Yeah, grit. The word sometimes I use is grit, which is like perseverance, scrappiness, resourcefulness, all that together.
On behalf of the Georges family and the Nieman Foundation, the Crimson, thank you so much.
Thank you.